Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Monday. My name is Katie Gideon, and I will be the on-camera facilitator rounding out a pretty packed weekend of socials. So I'm glad that you're here. I want to give a huge shout out to my co-facilitator in the chat, Jennifer Kay. She will be hanging out there. We are happy to see her. We are happy to be here on a Monday. And so glad that you're here. Welcome. We are excited to kick off the first weekly setup of July. But as just a little bit of a spoiler alert, we're not going to dive full on into the July mind map. Instead, we have one of those bonus weeks, and I think you're really going to like it. So don't feel pressured to have the mind map all set up yet. We'll walk through all the instructions, but we're excited with that bonus one. And as always, Callie, you took the words right out of my mouth. It is good to have a new month and a new week and a new theme and all of those things. So, welcome. If this is one of your very first socials or one of your first socials in a while or a long time, I saw a couple of those folks. Welcome back. Put in the chat if this is your first one or one you haven't been in a while. We always like to welcome our new folks. Just double check to make sure that it is set to everyone because we have some amazing returning socialers in the chat that always are so kind and generous with their thoughts and perspectives. And we want everyone to be able to participate in the chat as much or as little in as you want, but just double check that it's set to everyone. Hosts and panelists comes just to myself and Jennifer. And so we are glad that you're here and we're really excited to get started. So as always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. When we talk about limit repetitive product and accessory questions, we always like to discuss them. And that's because we like to share our own products, but we also love to see some everybody, if you choose to use other apps, to kind of connect on those. So you can certainly share that information. We just ask that it doesn't detract from the setup and why we're here. And then, as always, we will most likely redirect those customer care inquiries to our team, hello at silkandsonder.com. So we know usually with the first of the month, there may be some delays with your journals. So definitely reach out to hello at silkandsonder.com. We do not have access to that information here. So if your journal isn't quite here yet, don't worry. You can still participate. We include all of the examples on the slides. You can have those sticky notes ready to go, or even some of those larger scrap paper. And then, as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So we love to celebrate all that was good of the previous month, but maybe you didn't have a great month, and so you're ready to put it behind, but we're glad that you've come to be here to acknowledge that. So maybe you don't want to continue to revisit or re-explore all of those things and thoughts and feelings that you had then. Just set up some of those mental boundaries or mental barriers, because at the end of this, you should walk away a little bit more excited, a little bit more inspired, and a little bit more optimistic about the week to come. So we certainly don't want you kind of reaching back into those kind of negative ideas, even though we do like to hold space for it to be acknowledged. So, new theme. And I am still trying to kind of sort out how and what I want to do with this theme. So I've kind of gone back and forth with a couple different things, but this month's theme is independence. And I think it's and obviously a great one for July. I find it that kind of easy transition, but with it being an easy transition, I have found it a little bit trickier to make it kind of a self-independence concept. And I am a big bookworm and I do love Jane Eyre. So I came across this quote from that, which is, I am no bird, no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. And so, if you had read Mayha's letter, I think there is this great idea of gaining self-independence without isolating yourself. And I feel like that's one of those that is always a great concept to look at when we talk about the weekly setups, because that's really embracing delegation. asking for support, asking for help, being able to independently set up these boundaries and talk about what you need and what you want, but then still being able to ask for some of that help and assistance as you need it, but still controlling your narrative in that situation. So that's kind of the nuance that I have found in incorporating independence in there. There are certainly opportunities to celebrate some of those accomplishments and stuff that we've made in that category, but obviously some interesting maybe perspectives to come around independence. So as always, please feel free to share in the chat your kind of thoughts, feelings, initial maybe hesitations, reservations about independence, because we always appreciate the different perspectives that are out there. And as always, we're going to start with that independence bonus question, and then we're going to do our rosebud thorn reflection, and then we'll move into those weekly setup pages. And again, if I am too much for you, you can mute me. If the music is too much, you can mute it. If I need to go back to slides, just let me know in the chat, and I will be sure to do that when I go off camera. Same thing with you, please continue to share kind of thoughts, feelings, and emotions as we continue to go through the sections. Even if we go to something different, this is your opportunity to kind of spend the next hour on your self-care journey and share kind of what that is looking like at the moment. So now we have that bonus mind map, and I'm not gonna lie, it's to me a very, very big one. And this is how we're going to kind of wrap it in. So I do not expect this to be something that you're going to finish in, unfortunately, the very short of amount of time that we're going to be able to dedicate to this. But I definitely recommend get out those notepads, get out your phone or your screen grabs, because you're going to want to kind of use this as you go through the next week, maybe even this entire month. But we're looking at the mid-year check-in. And so this is a great way to connect back to your thoughts, intentions, hopes, and goals for 2025. Kelly, exactly. Absolutely overwhelming. But what I think is great is some of the talking points that we have here, and you can continue to revisit it this week, as well as kind of set aside some of your journaling routine this week and even this month to kind of go back and revisit it. So, a couple of the highlights is what are some of the things you envisioned for 2025, whether big or small? How have these hopes or intentions manifested in your life over the past 6 months? What successes have you celebrated? How have you connected with those achievements? Maybe even looking at what some of those challenges have been. And so it's an opportunity to kind of shift focus or take an idea, take a initial pulse of kind of where you're at. And a couple other ways that you can do that is you can find reconnecting with your word of the year. If you established a word of the year earlier, you can double check at those vision boards, past journals, or anything that you use to set your intentions in 2025. I will also include in the chat the last 6 themes that we've had thus far in 2025, because what could be used as you can reflect on each month using those themes, kind of similar to what we do with each month's reflections. Or maybe you want to focus a little bit more on the different categories. You're like, Katie, 6 months is a lot to have to kind of pare down and think. I can't even think about what I had for lunch 2 days ago. And so maybe you want to help yourself with some of those different categories. Maybe you kind of really want to focus on how has your health progressed? How have some of those relationships progressed? Have you been able to celebrate and invest more in your interests and your hobbies? So you can also use that as kind of a category focus there if you're like, I can't remember what I did in the past couple months. And same thing with this is also an opportunity to reconnect with your goals. So you can obviously ask yourself these questions as you go, because we still have 6 months to either readjust, reevaluate, refocus, refresh, whatever word you want to use in order to do this. And so I know it's a lot. I feel you. But I definitely think it's a great opportunity to do a check-in. So that's where absolutely take all of the notes, have everything ready to go, and continue to check in there. And so we love this opportunity to do it. And we know it is kind of best at this point in time. I am going to stop talking. I'm going to let you kind of start initially thinking on these things, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone. And I absolutely appreciate you kind of going along with this fairly large lift, I think, in my opinion. And yes, we had done kind of these specific socials in the past. And I still think even just the hour social dedicated to these is not going to be able to come up with that full fulfillment either. And also, don't worry, I'm going to put these slides in the Silk and Sonder app so you can you can flag that in the app and come back to it so you don't have to always come back to the videos. So we'll make sure it's there. And I feel like even I am compelled to continue to kind of help with the check-in process. So I'll probably be a little bit more active there, but fully aware that this is a great time to look at it, but it's certainly not something that we're going to solve in the next 5 minutes, the next day, even the next week. But I think it's been interesting to at least have these different ideas to kind of ask yourself, because sometimes that's the hardest thing. How do you get started with looking at this? But I appreciate that everyone has started to include this, and I did see a commonality with the kind of pivoting. And it's certainly one of those things, life happens, variables get thrown in your direction that you can't control. So I think there's a lot that you can't help but pivot in some way, shape, or form. And just being able to take some time to sit with your thoughts and think on it, I think is really valuable and really helpful, because maybe it'll help you reprioritize, refocus, and move forward with that. So again, thank you everybody for not getting too scared off by the lift that this is. But we're glad that it is. And I know it is a way to start a Monday morning social. But we're going to keep going into our reflections and we're going to do our rosebud thorn exercise. So if you're still in that June journal, you can complete this on page 56. If you are in your July journal, you can find a blank space or use the rosebud thorn on page 30 as just kind of the placeholder for these. But the rosebud thorn is a great way to reflect on your previous week, to acknowledge kind of where were you happy, where were you satisfied, what were the highlights, but on that very same page to counteract some of those maybe lower points, the challenges, something that wasn't as well or something not as great, and then maybe find something that you can get excited about or that emerging opportunity. So the rose, something that we're excited about, something that made us happy. I am a part of the Main Character Club over here in Scotland. It's a great little organization that hosts things similar to this, but with a very fantasy-driven element. I've gone on a couple tours and events with them. And so we had a really lovely workshop for the end of June. The theme over there was romanticizing your life. So it was really fun. It was a great way to spend just some time not in the driver's seat. So I appreciated that, came up with some really great ideas and movement there. And then we look for the bud. So this is something that is an emerging opportunity, something you're looking forward to, something you're excited about, something that is maybe out on the horizon that you haven't quite figured out what to do with yet. So I am currently living in Scotland, so we do have the July 4th coming up. Obviously, it's not a holiday over here, but I still like to celebrate it in some form or fashion, in true American fashion. And there is a night at the movies, orchestra candlelight concert on Friday. So my friend and I are going to go to that. A lot of them are US films. So I feel like it's an appropriate way to do it. And if you've come to any of my socials, you know I am on my like chamber orchestra, chamber quartet era. So this is just going to feed all of that live and in person in an amazingly beautiful church. And then, as always, we still like to acknowledge those challenges, something that just isn't going so well, or maybe that is just taking up too much time, energy, and effort in your brain, in your body, in your day to day. And so it's always great on that kind of counteract to acknowledge that it's there. I was quite busy this weekend and I was doing a lot of stuff later at night, so I'm tired. I woke up tired today. I'm all I can think about is when do I get to go to bed tonight? So that's just kind of where I'm at right now. I need to catch up and I need to certainly focus on it. So that's going to be a priority this week because I don't have as many later evening commitments. So that's going to be what I'm going to focus on. And then, as always, we would love to hear what your rosebud thorns are because we love to celebrate those roses, get excited for those upcoming buds, but provide some of those extra love, thoughts, prayers, and support for those thorns. So if you'd like to share those in the chat, again, if you're in your June journal, page 56. If you're in your July journal, it's going to be that blank space or page 30. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I love a good finish on a song like that, but appreciate with the weekly check-ins. A lot of our returning socialers, I feel like you would get very much invested in each other's lives, and I loved the support that was being provided in the chat over some of these topics. And it looks like, again, some of you guys have had some great, amazing milestones. I love the milestones of family members hitting all those amazing things and starting new chapters of their own, but then seeing that the weather starts to play a big factor in some of those thorns. Work starts to get a little bit chaotic with all of the vacations and people in and out, as well as then kind of just the recovering from illness and all those things. So thank you, everybody, for sharing. Always appreciate it. And like I said, please continue to share in the chat if you want to. I always find it as just a really nice release to put it out into the universe, as these are the three highlights and everything from that particular week. And they can, again, you can use that momentum and those ideas as we move forward into the weekly setup pages, or you can just put them out there and leave them in the past and they can just live there now. But thank you, everybody, for that. And so now we are going to shift into those weekly setup pages. So this is going to be on page 26 and page 27 in your July journal. And so we'll start with this week. I am one of those that I do like to knit all the different sections together, but just because that is something that I do does not mean it is something that you need to do. Because what I like to do is always start with asking yourself, what do you need? So I found this great graphic of do I need to? Because I feel like if we get a little bit lost or a little bit stuck, it's the best thing to ask, what do I need this week or what do I need to do? Because we know that a week in July is going to look very different than that week in June, the week in November, or even the week in February. And what's great about these pages is that you can tailor them to what you need. Sometimes what you need is exactly as written. Sometimes what you need is something completely different. You've taken it over, you've made it your own style, and you've completely redesigned it. Or maybe what you need is to take a break from some of the sections. So if you get a little stuck, ask yourself, do I need to? And then you can ask yourself any of these questions. Because even I found myself being like, I actually think I need to do a lot of these. So it helped me kind of focus on what I need to do with my weekly setup pages. So we're going to start at the top of page 26 with This Week I Want to Feel. And so you can ask yourself, how do you want to feel this time next week? Or just kind of take ownership of the week that you want to have. I love the intentional optimism that we can do with this section. Maybe you want to feel, Alice is already putting in there, empowered. Jennifer wants to feel prepared. Maybe it's 1% better. Maybe it's more hydrated. Maybe it's less pressure, more peace. Maybe it is stickers. Maybe it's a doodle. Maybe it is you want to feel less like the fragile strawberry in the heat. I love the motivation that could be there. So keep putting in the chat. I'm going to throw on a quick tune, but let's try and to figure out this week how you want to feel, and we'll see you soon. So now that we have either the visual of how we want to feel or the kind of idea behind how we want to feel this week, we can now help support that with the weekly major three goals and the to-dos. So I'm going to combine these two sections, and they can be weekly major three goals, weekly minor goals, just three goals in general, or even kind of one or two, just a few goals. For me in particular, as I said, I was dealing with low energy, certainly tired, and I found myself reaching for more caffeinated drinks. I know I mentioned this last week, so I'm on trend for now week number two. So it has officially been elevated to a weekly major three goal where I need to hydrate more. So that's definitely one of my focuses. And then you can also break it down into either like the three big things that you want to focus on, maybe they're mental and emotional reminders, or maybe you want to break it down into categories. So you can certainly use the professional goal, mind goal, body goal. Maybe it's three things that you want to accomplish every single day. So you have it in an early, a midday, and an evening. We love the alliteration of frog, fun, and fierce. The other one was creative, capable, and carefree. I know Alice, that's hers. I use hers often. And then maybe it's combining those sections of the weekly to-dos. So you have these specific to-dos that you want to accomplish in order to support the three particular goals that you've set aside. And then we love a good bingo board. So maybe you put it in that type of category, or maybe you kind of repurpose it in that sense. And then maybe it's a morning routine. Maybe it's the things that you want to stop doing right now. As we kind of brought in loosely the mid-year check-in, maybe these goals kind of focus a little bit more on trying to establish kind of your mid-year check-in. So maybe those are the three goals as you want to focus on, reflecting on the past 6 months. And then your second goal is to understand what type of pivot you need to make in some of the categories for the next 6 months. And then I think the last one should always be some sort of form of positive or a celebration, acknowledging all the work that you have done the last 6 months. And then, right. Thanks, Amanda. Yes, work is definitely a big hindrance, especially when it's so nice outside. Maybe you want to use quotes or affirmations in that capacity, and kind of that's your motivation there. And then as we move into those weekly to-dos, um, you can do the to-do list. I know the to-do list page from this last month was quite successful. So maybe you want to do a smaller version of the to-do list. As I pointed out, in kind of working in the theme of independence, but still needing to ask for help and support because I just can't do it all because I am not perfect. Do not have all the skills needed. I am very much a beginner in some categories. I am embracing the delegation aspect of the Eisenhower matrix, and I am celebrating it every single time I do delegate something. And that's not only the big things, but also the little things. I would say I talked about my salads before. Like salad kits are an amazing delegation tool because to put all the pieces together to make a salad, that can be very time consuming. So you can embrace the Eisenhower matrix. You can use those to-do lists. You can reshuffle and reprioritize those under the needs and the wants. Maybe you have it broken down into your work goals and your personal to-dos to support all of those. And maybe you just kind of not want to do anything. Work is taking up a lot of time and attention. So maybe your to-dos are going to take a little bit of a back seat, or maybe you need to find that nice little balance to continue to motivate yourself to do all those things. So maybe it's more of a weekly to be reminder. So I'm going to give you some time to work on these goals and to-dos. Obviously, in the chat, you guys are already beat me to it, but would love to have that conversation in the chat, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. You guys are providing such great insight as well as additional support just to kind of make these goals realistic. So again, I love that sometimes it's adding a few more things, sometimes it's taking away a little bit more things. And then I think it also at the end of the day, it's giving yourself a little bit of grace if you don't quite meet the standards that you set for yourself right now. Things happen. And I think it's always the flexibility and the adjustment to be able to do so. I think is really can be helpful. So we're now at the bottom of page 26 in your July journal with those habits and activities. This one I think is fun. I've just gotten really excited about this section more so than usual. And I think it's because I have changed my mindset a little bit to it. Instead of seeing it as the things that I have to do, these are the things that I absolutely get excited about. This is how I combat the work meetings with the three things that I want to do every single day. Those are listed on my monthly habit tracker. And then I carry over those three items to my weekly habit and activity tracker. So that's move, read, and journal. And I've been really focusing on establishing a routine around being able to do those every single day, but being realistic with how much time I can devote to them. And so sometimes it's looking at it from just different perspectives for that. Sometimes it's adding a goal to it. Sometimes it's leaving the goal blank. Sometimes if you just feel like you're being stretched thin, maybe you just cover this section with a sticker and just focus on those goals and those to-dos. Or maybe these are kind of those more mental and emotional reminders that you need. It's just kind of another positive kind of motivation cheerleading section for this page. We also may have different habits and activities for the different weekdays versus the weekends. I know, especially in the summer, if you are an educator and you're off for the summer, or you have school age kids, or you have college age kids that are returning, those weekdays look very different and those weekends look very different. So being able to be realistic and kind of schedule those ahead of time, I think is really valuable with this particular section. And just because there are 5 lines listed does not mean you need to use all 5. In fact, really, I tend to use 3 on a pretty regular basis, maybe throw on a fourth one just because. And I always encourage the 5 days to schedule every month. So maybe look at adding one of these into your kind of habits and activities if this is something you want to focus on. I had mentioned that I've had a learning day this weekend because I needed to catch up on some schoolwork. So check off that. Already accomplished something from that, and that always makes me happy, but did need to buckle down and look at that. And then, as always, I love the iconography of these things. And I have repurposed my expense page into what I'm now calling my adventure list for that month. So I write down different adventure activities that I do. And then also, again, I know it's crazy hot in some places, but sometimes I feel like I get that how to deal with the nice day guilt. I sit at my desk and see how beautiful it is. I look at the temperature and I add a little bit extra pressure to force myself to go outside because it is a nice day. And I feel like sometimes that is a little bit to the detriment because I know there's a lot of things I can accomplish, at night when it's not lovely and sunny. But then it also impacts my sleep and all those other things. So I think it's one of those that we shouldn't feel guilty if it is a nice day, but we should also embrace being outside as well. And then again, here's some more ideas to include on those July habits and activities or just the self-care reminders. So I'm going to give you some time to work on your habits and activities. I see some of you already sharing, so I would love to see where you focus on. Are these things that you're going to try that are a little bit on the newer side, or are these things that are already kind of established routines that you want to make sure that you account for during your week? And we'll see. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So now we're going to flip over to page 27 in your July journal. And so for me in particular, the page we just completed, that is my absolute staple. I refer to the second page lovingly as the B side because I'm a big music person. So we just completed the A side of the record, which has all the hits. That's why you bought the record in the first place. And then you've got the B side, which there's some amazing gems when you need them, but me in particular, I don't always listen to them. And I appreciate that there is a lot of opportunity here to repurpose these sections, which I think goes back to asking yourself, what do you need this week? And so that is how I have kind of reframed my thought when it comes to this page. So I would say a lot of times I leave this page blank, and it was because I just wasn't able to meet the expectations that I kind of wanted on myself for these because I just didn't always use it in that way. But you can obviously use the meal plan as a true form, a meal plan. I love when that magically happens. Or you can track kind of what you consume on a more real-time basis. This can also be if you're having maybe a hard time finding those glimmers in your day, finding those one things, the one good things, the one thing that's kind of made you happy. Maybe this is where you kind of put that because this also has a great format for kind of the meal plan for the soul. Excellent. Amanda puts the affirmations there. That is one of the great examples here. So maybe this is where you put those journal prompts. Maybe this is where you take down some of those notes for the daily rituals or those daily affirmations. Maybe this is where you need to put that just mental break with those amazing doodles or kind of use it in that capacity. I definitely use this section as a clothing and wardrobe packer for when I have to travel, especially for work. It really has helped me bring the essentials, make sure that I have everything and that I can comfortably fit in the smaller carry-on bags because I'm usually not gone that long, but I need to make sure that I have everything. And so maybe it is again the creative outlet or how you kind of finish your day. You can also either plan ahead for that mind body health plan, or that can also be something that you track a little bit more in real time. Don't worry, I'll go back through all of these slides once I go off camera. And so that's maybe embracing some of the alliterations of the weekdays or embracing some of the national days of. Or it's again, I think it's a great spot for a mental check-in. So I like the idea of asking yourself, how are you feeling? So therefore, what do you need? And I think that's a great little just check-in that you can do either at the beginning of the day or maybe the end of the day to help you kind of refocus and get ready for the day ahead or even the day for tomorrow. Again, I love some more bucket list ideas. And I always feel a little bit bad for July because I feel like so much of July is associated with all the fun things that you can do at like July 4th celebrations. So I appreciate it when you can extend it further to the month because I feel like July has a lot more to offer us outside of that. And so maybe this is where your reading log is, especially if you're subscribed like my dad does to the summer reading program. He's not a what I would consider an avid reader, but he's already on 3 books this summer, and he is fully retired. So really, he just does it out of fun. And so you can use it for those different ideas. Maybe here are some gentle reminders that you need to include there. I also noticed in the chat that there were certainly some heavier conversations, so these seemed a little bit more a little bit more appropriate than I initially thought. But these again are some of those gentle reminders. And sometimes these are just things that you need to hear. So this should be the little bit of the pick me up if you haven't been feeling that. So jot these down if you want. And then the shopping list can go hand in hand with those meal plans. When I use my meal plan for the travel packing, this is where I include all those accessories I need, the adapters, the chargers, the business cards, all of those things, they get less here. Maybe this is where your bingo board lives with the seasonal bingo boards, or if you have a birthday coming up, maybe you have a birthday bingo. But this tends to be a really nice catch-all section that can be repurposed for, again, what do you need? Maybe it's some of those social check-ins. Maybe it's the ideas for mini breaks at work. And maybe it is truly a shopping list with the don't buy or the buy, and other sort of bingo board options. So I'm going to give you time to finish up this page, and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And so now that we've completed page 27, we have that very last section with the I am loving on that. And that is an opportunity to just put out into the world something that is making you smile, that is making you happy. What are you loving? And I always enjoy this particular section because a lot of times it's very random and absolutely out of context. And that always makes me chuckle as I go through my journal each week, kind of reviewing some of those things. So I always enjoy that. So if you want to include in the chat, maybe what you are currently loving, we would certainly enjoy reading those. But with that being said, can you believe we have reached the end? It always goes by so quickly, but it sounded like a lot of us really, really needed it at this moment. But as always, we would love to continue the conversation in the Silk and Sonder app, because we love sharing the pages with each other. Like I said, I'll make sure to include all of those mid-year check-in inspiration ideas in that Silk and Sonder app for you to have there. And then we have a couple other really fun offers to kind of go along with the mid-year reset. So we are offering a 14-day free trial, no credit card required. Some folks have been having issues with that, so definitely reach out to at silkandsonder.com to get that idea. But you can try it absolutely risk-free, and we still are running that 50% off for our AI personalized coaching, Jenny. Jenny is great. She's certainly a really amazing thing. I know Meha is extremely excited and very happy with it. But as always, we're looking for feedback, any of those ideas, so let us know. And then one of those new features attached to that is now a text to speech journaling prompt option. And so we're really excited that that has come out. And I know it's a little bit of a long time away from now, but July 24th is that paid for exclusive. And we're going to, Meha is going to be working with Trity, who specialize in those personality tests. So Jen just included that link to their website there because Meha did a blog post on how she incorporates some of those personality traits into her day to day. So have that on your calendar if you wish to attend. That's going to be July 24th. If you can't go in person, or if something comes up and you've already purchased it and you can't make it, you will still get a link to the recording for that. So again, we know it's a long time from now, but you can jot that down in your calendar. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include it, the link to the Spotify playlist in the chat. And so thank you everybody for joining us. I'm really looking forward to what July has to offer. And so same thing with exploring the new theme of independence. And so thank you everybody for joining. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. You guys are going to have a fantastic rest of your week. And we hope to see you at another event soon. We'll see you then. Bye.